Okay, hi, welcome, Dr. Johannes Ullrich from the SANS Institute. What was it? SANS Institute of Research?
SANS Technology Institute. That's the place I work for.
Yeah, SANS Technology Institute, Dean of Research in there, and behind you I see the sign Internet Storm Center, and so yeah, thanks. So. How does the Internet Storm Center and SANS Technology Institute, how do they mix up? How are they connected?
Yeah, so SANS Technology Institute is the graduate level training, so it's basically university, accredited university here in the United States. And the Internet Storm Center is the research part of this university. So as Dean of Research for the SANS Technology Institute, I'm also heading up the Internet Storm Center.
Okay, thanks. So what kind of research does the Internet Storm Center do exactly? Can you explain what you do in your daily life?
Yeah, so what we try to do is we try to sort of measure the pulse of malicious activity on the internet. So one project we have where we get sort of most of our data from is to actually have worldwide volunteers that set up honeypots, send us their logs, we feed into the database, and we analyze this. And we have a number of our students, but also volunteers that help us analyze the data and detect new attacks as they come out and comment on them, and also explore what vulnerabilities are being attacked by those attacks and how to best protect against them.
Okay, great. So what sort of people set up honeypots? I mean, could I do that as a private person?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Raspberry Pi. I have in the background here a couple stacked up there where I'm playing with them. But so you can set them up on your home network and redirect just your Fritzbox or whatever you have, a port to the honeypot, and have it basically tell you what's out there, what's trying to get into your network. And it's actually amazing, like even your little home network is sort of getting a couple attacks an hour, kind of, sometimes as many as every 5 minutes.
That's interesting. Do you supply an image, like a Linux image for the Raspberry Pi, which I can just download?
Yeah, you first install the basic Raspbian software, and then we have a little script that installs our software on the Raspberry Pi.
Okay, great. That's might be something I'll try. But when you get all this data from the honeypots, and especially looking at, of course, the current crisis, the current situation we're in, have you seen a change in the sort of attacks or the number of attacks which are happening during current crisis?
Yeah, one thing we have written about is that RDP, the Remote Desktop Protocol service, is attacked much more. So attackers are dedicating more resources to find these servers. And what I assume is that companies that sort of have to rush to get remote access to their company system set up just enabled RDP without sort of doing the proper VPN and what you typically should use in order to access company networks.
Okay, we also heard from Zscaler. We talked to someone there, and they noted a sharp increase in the number of brute force attacks. Is that something you can also?
Yeah, we haven't seen the brute force attacks. We just see the scans for the port. But that's a logic thing that the attacker will do once they find an open RDP server, that they'll try to brute force passwords or use credential stuffing where they found some passwords in the past for that particular organization and now try to see if they work for RDP.
Okay, great. So that would have been actually a very good transition to the actual topic we were talking about today, the password date. Yeah, but before I go into that, just one more question on the crisis, because another statistics we've seen is that actually the increase in the number of attacks could be traced sort of with the journey of the coronavirus. So meaning there was first an increase in attacks in China, and then it went to Italy and France and Spain, and then it slowly spread to the US. Is that also something you were seeing?
I haven't looked at it, but I guess I'll look later and see what I find.
Okay, that'll be interesting.
But it's one of the nice things because we have honeypots in many of these places, so that kind of gives us that visibility.
Okay, Good, good. So then let's get into the World Password Day, which is the topic we wanted to talk about. So maybe a little bit into the history. So passwords were invented quite a while ago. I mean, at least I know that I've been using them for I don't know, 30 years or something.
Yeah.
What would have been the alternative if passwords weren't there?
Well, that's really the problem that everybody's struggling with.
Yeah.
In general, to authenticate, it's sort of the good old, what I know, that's a password, something I have, some kind of token. And then, of course, biometrics is something that I am, like facial recognition. Of course, among those, passwords is probably the simplest thing to implement, if not necessarily the most secure one and the cheapest one to implement as well.
Yeah, that's obviously true. So, but these days we have all of us. I actually, if I look at my one, no, not OneCloud, the iCloud password
Yeah.
key manager, it says I have 480 something passwords, and I don't think that's all of them because I also have a password manager, and
Yeah.
there's much more. So where would you store your passwords most securely? I mean, I mentioned some of them already, but how would you
No,
go?
a password manager, I think, is the only way to really manage the problem as an end user. You have to come up with different, hard to remember passwords for every site that you visit. And there's no way you can do that. Writing them down, actually, a lot of people joke over the post-it on the monitor kind of approach.
Right.
But in my home, a post-it on a monitor is actually not that bad. It may not be that great in a public area like a receptionist or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's probably more secure than most alternatives. But ultimately, some kind of password manager, some kind of way to write them down is really the only way how you can solve that problem as an end user.
Okay, great. Talking about the security of passwords, I mean, we've all been trained to think that a password with a certain length and a digit and then a symbol or something like that is the most secure. But these days, I hear more and more often that it's not so much the complexity, so the hard to remember passwords, but that it's actually the length of the password which is key here. So if I would be, I've actually I shouldn't say that I know, but I do have one password for one local file, which is actually a sentence from a very famous German classical book.
Yeah.
Is that another possibility?
It's not a possibility, but then of course now the password brute forcing, if you consider it as an attack, will just replace the letter with words.
Yeah.
And there have been some approaches where, hey, now you have 8 words. That's just like 8 letters. Now there are more words than letters, so you're usually better off with a phrase, and you balance a little bit the idea of something that you at least can still remember and something that's hard to break. The other attack this long password helps against is these rainbow tables. So if someone steals a list of passwords that was properly hashed from a server, they can always brute force it. There's nothing you can prevent at that point. But the shorter your password, the faster it is to brute force. And in particular, passwords sort of up to 10 characters in length, you can actually download sort of pre-computed hash tables. So once you get beyond 10 characters, those pre-computed hash tables, these rainbow tables, no longer work, and you get a little bit more security there.
Okay, so it's better to have a password which is at least 10 characters in length? That's
correct, yeah.
Okay. So lately there's another, not alternative really, but the FIDO2, the hardware keys. I don't have one yet, but I always was thinking of getting one. Would you?
You also have the Google one and the YubiKey one, kind of. Yeah, those are the 2 most common ones. Yeah.
So would you recommend getting one?
Yeah, and I think I'm really a big fan of FIDO2. We actually just did a session at the RSA conference earlier this year about FIDO2 and a little bit sort of almost a sales pitch kind of for it. Okay. But what FIDO2 is really, it's not just about these tokens. The problem you have is you need some kind of standard how you log in to your web applications. You don't want to run around with a bucket full of tokens and then have a different token for each website.
Right.
So what FIDO2 really defines is the standard. How does the token work? How does the browser interact with the token? And how does the browser then send that information to the web application, to the web server? So with one token, you can now log into multiple websites. And they also sort of solve the problem. Even though I use the same token, a different ID is sent to every website. So it's not that different websites would know that I'm the same person. And I think what's really killer about sort of FIDO2 is it's not just about the tokens. Because there's another device that you probably carry around with you, and that's your phone.
Right.
The phone can act as a token. So if you are logging into a website from a phone, the token is built into the phone. And then with your Face ID or fingerprint ID, you unlock the token, and now your phone authenticates to the website. So in particular, like where I find the biggest pain point for the user is on mobile phones trying to type a long password.
Yeah, that's true.
Often the password saves don't work that well. Like in recent versions of Android, iOS, they made it a little bit better. But the way I was described it, you're on the way to work in your car, if you get to go to work again, and
Right.
coffee in one hand, phone in the other hand, and steering with the knee. And so
not something you should do, but yes, I know the situation.
and then trying to type a complex password is tricky. Yeah? So having that built into phones, and also now some computers that have like Windows Hello, for example, is integrated, is FIDO2 compliant. That really makes the user experience a lot better, makes it cheaper because you already have the device. And just having a standard also makes it easier for the user to know how I log in.
Right.
So you don't have to remember different procedures for different websites.
But I understand that we're not quite there yet.
Well, it works. The problem is websites have to implement it. That's really where the hiccup is right now. So all modern operating systems like Windows 10, the latest version of iOS, Android, all support it, and the recent browsers. But not many websites really support it yet.
Do I need an additional app if I want to use my iPhone as a FIDO2 token?
Nope, and that's kind of the nice thing about it. It's built in the operating system in the browser. So the operating system, the browser Safari on iOS knows how FIDO2 works, and you don't need really anything. And even better, you don't even need a password. Now there's sort of that two-factor scheme where I first enter a password, then I use my token. But for lower security websites, let's say basic online shopping or such, you may just use the token and really remove the lower security part of two-factor, which is the password.
Right. So, but what websites? What kind of website? I mean, there must be some, hopefully also bigger websites which use FIDO2. So, do you have an example?
Google, I think, supports it now pretty well. Yeah.
Okay, so if the way I log into Google with my iPhone is with TouchID, of course, right? But that's still filling in the passwords. So
correct. With the TouchID, you're just unlocking the password that's safe.
Exactly. Yeah.
You should be able to set it up for FIDO2 as well. And you have to change your account to support FIDO2.
Okay, I'll try that. And you say that also works with Windows Hello, or I have a fingerprint scanner on my laptop, so that should probably also work, even though.
Yeah, if you have a Mac with a fingerprint scanner, that should work. And for the Windows laptops, as long as that fingerprint scanner supports Windows Hello, it should work. Okay. Now, one little caveat about this is that's the part that I haven't seen a website get right yet.
Okay.
And that's what if you lose your device?
Yeah.
The FIDO2 standard suggests that you allow the user to register multiple devices. So usually use your phone, but you could also have one of these hardware keys, and the hardware key you leave at home. So if you lose your phone, you can always recover using the hardware key.
Right.
Most of these schemes right now fall apart when you lose the phone or when you lose the authenticator, and then you have to go through some kind of stupid reset feature that, of course, asks you questions again, asks you stuff that you know.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, may send you an SMS or an email or so to confirm.
Okay, yeah. So, but if it sends an SMS to the phone you just lost, then
Yeah. Well, you may be able to get the number back, but then you have all this,
yeah.
SMS hijacking and these problems again.
Okay. But it's still a huge improvement, I understand,
Yes.
over
Yeah.
good passwords. Okay, so then password day. I mean, I know there is actually another password day, I think at the beginning of February, that it's change your password day, right?
Okay, yeah.
And
That's actually another big problem, if you should change your password or not.
exactly, that was exactly my question. So should I change the password or not?
I don't think you should. You shouldn't even know what your password is. Uh, um, leave leave it up to the password manager to figure out passwords. A lot of the password managers now have features that will alert you if a certain website got compromised and the password may have leaked. So then they'll alert you, hey, for this website, you probably want to change your password. But in the end, it shouldn't really matter if someone stole the password from that website, because you use different passwords on different websites. So
Right.
the only thing they can do is get into the website they're already broken into, and that doesn't really increase any risks there.
Yeah. Okay. That's true. I mean, it's probably not the reality. I know probably most of us use at least one password for more than one site, but
Right. Yeah.
it should be different. Yes.
There's always that quick password you use for the sites you don't care about, and then you use those sites for a while, and all of a sudden you start caring about them, and then you still have that old password.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly. Yeah. So, but then, as a security expert, World Password Day, is that a happy day for you or a sad day?
A sad day, because every year they publish that list of like the top 10 worst
Yeah.
passwords. And if you go back, I did it like last year, you go back like the last 10, 20 years or so, different companies publish these lists, and they're essentially identical. Yeah? Ever since these lists have been published, they have the same top 10 passwords. So like I said, passwords really don't work, and I don't think we can really blame the user always. The user pays for all the software, pays for all the hardware, pays for all the services, and then we blame them for not doing it right, kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
So really have to get beyond passwords.
Okay. And how do we get beyond passwords besides FIDO2?
I think FIDO2 is our best bet right now, and some of the biometrics that's built into the devices that makes that more approachable and somewhat cheaper for the user because you already purchased it. Some of the privacy kinks have to be worked out there. But recent iterations, like what Google is doing with their Android phones and Apple with iOS, where the data stays on the phone, stays under control of the user. I think that's sort of a reasonable compromise there.
Okay. There's actually, since you mentioned the new technologies built into the phone, such as TouchID, but mainly Face ID.
Yeah.
I remember when Apple introduced Face ID, they said that it's more secure than TouchID, which I always thought might be the case from a technological point of view. But in reality, isn't it easier to just hold the phone to someone's face and thereby unlocking it, as opposed to trying to grab his finger and put it on the Touch ID button?
Well, they sort of have a little bit protection there, like sort of alive. The eyes have to be open, I think, in iOS. But yes, that has happened, with kids holding up the phone to their parents while they were asleep and approving purchases. And that's why iOS sometimes still asks sort of for a password after you for some purchases and things like that to prevent some of these issues. It's always a trade-off of risk, and in the end, you have to remain usable. FIDO2, it's a great. I'm not sure if it's the right technology like for a bank. But for 99% of websites that you log into every day, it's probably fine.
These days, you have the login with the social account. And I mean, I have a website on my own. We don't have anything where you need to log into yet, but why aren't many websites implementing that feature?
Well, the problem with the social login, like the login with Facebook, login with Twitter, is that you rely on those third parties to actually authenticate users for you, and the privacy issue, that now every website that you log into knows your Facebook user ID. And so different websites could talk to each other and compare notes on what websites you're visiting.
Yeah.
It also often requires that you add some JavaScript to your website. And that's coming from those third parties. I'm not sure if you saw, that was like a couple weeks ago, a story with Stripe, the payment processor. Mm-hmm. And you know, similar problem, you're sort of trying to authenticate a credit card that someone submits. And when you include their JavaScript on your page, they're exactly following mouse movements and everything that happens on that page.
Right. Okay.
And they do have a legitimate reason for that, to prevent fraud and things like this. But still, from a privacy point of view, in particular, since it wasn't really clearly declared, that was of an issue.
Okay, great, thanks. So maybe one question to finish off. What was the funniest password you've ever seen?
Oh, trust no one. And it was used on a site that I ran at the time. And
right.
Of course, they were right, because I knew what their password was.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's a good one, actually. Okay. Yeah, all right. I think that's everything for World Password Day.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Johannes Ullrich, and yeah, thanks for the nice talk. And I'll make sure to get the Raspberry Pi set up and running. I actually have 2 Raspberry Pis lying around here, which I don't know what to do with. So
everybody has a stack of them sitting around, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.